thank you everyone for joining us. My name is Dave Ross. I'm the Agile product evangelist here at Miro, and it is my absolute pleasure and honor to host this session today. And I'm going to introduce you to the man who's going to do most of the speaking, Steve Kuo, who is a consultant with Industrial Logic. He's also on the current board of directors for Agile Open Northwest, and very active in the Seattle area software crafters community as well. I had the privilege of meeting Steve a few months ago to talk about an emerging Agile framework called FAST. And Steve shared with me his great idea that he has sort of developed in conjunction with others and tested in the field called discovery trees. And I thought it was a blockbuster idea. It's powerful in its simplicity. And I'm super excited to give Steve the floor and let him share with all of you his great idea. So Steve, over to you.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. Thank you very much, Dave, for that wonderful intro. And like you said, we met a couple of months ago talking about Fast Agile. That sort of is where discovery trees were really came into their own and developed. So let me go ahead and share my screen here. Sorry for this. Wait. Minor technical difficulty here. There we go. And so, yeah, my name's Steve Kuo, and we're here talking about growing discovery trees to plan and track emergent work in Miro. Dave helped me with this template and was very helpful with it. And here it is. And here I am now. The history behind some of this is that Quentin Cortell has what he's developed, the Fast Agile, the fluid scaling technology platform. I had the opportunity and the pleasure to work with him and a small core group of people at a very risk-averse healthcare insurance company. I know, imagine that, a healthcare company being risk-averse. That was there, and they had a challenge for us and the team that I'd put together, in that they needed to get to the cloud. They had 5 teams that had previously done it and failed getting to the cloud, and they knew that they had to get to the cloud and do it quickly within a 2-year time frame. So with that, they brought me in, spun up a team. Quentin came in, and we started iterating on things and playing with things, and Fast Agile was the right framework to work with there. But the challenge we had was tracking work and making work visible and trying to optimize keyboard time for developers. We had 30 to 45 people that were working on 3 to 7 dynamically reforming teams in 2-day cycles. And in those 2-day cycles, we were dynamically reteaming. So what that meant is that you could have anywhere from 2 to 8 people working on something for 2 days. And then the next reteaming cycle, you might have a whole different set of people. So that had a complication and some issues around needing to, number one, maximize or minimize planning and maximize hands-on keyboard, as well as continuity and information radiators. Now, why we needed information radiators was that, number one, we had teams that were reforming every 2 days. We also had people, this was a very high profile and high visibility product that we were working on, and CEOs would be walking by, other managers, other group leads would be walking by, and they'd want to know, what is this craziness that is happening here with these teams and all this talk, this noise, because it was a very noisy environment when we were working and playing. Working was play for us. And so what we did is we came up with this way of working. Now, like I said, our challenge was to minimize planning, maximize keyboard time. So we resorted to a just-in-time planning model and running experiments. We would run experiments and try and find the best way to do it and tweak things and evolve it as it goes. And those experiments sort of yielded two primary philosophies. One was, we will discover the work that needs to be done by doing the work. And two, plans are useless but planning is everything. So we acknowledged we did need to plan, and we did have to have some of that. But in doing the work, we actually discovered the work, but we had to find a way to track it. And from that came what has evolved into the Miroverse template on discovery trees. Now, a discovery tree isn't rocket science. It is a hierarchical tree. And I could talk about it for an hour, but in essence, it boils down to a hierarchical tree. You have one parent work item right here, and then you have other sub items underneath it. There's a legend up at the top that sort of gives a key as to what's been completed, what's in progress, things to do, things that are blocked. I've seen that legend actually increase over time and evolve for the teams that are using it. I've seen that legend include things like notes, things like comments, well, comments and notes being somewhat different, but it would all evolve around the information contained within that. Now, what's different and slightly different here on how we were using discovery trees was the nod to, we will discover the work to be done by doing the work, is we would ask ourselves, what's the simplest thing we can do to start getting feedback on something? And that was what we would emphasize and really focus on, to not plan everything out, but instead, let's focus on planning where we think we should go and start, and then just start there, and then flesh out the rest of the tree as we go. That led to this really becoming a tool for the people that were doing the work, rather than a tool for people planning, here's all the things that need to be done, and a big board plan. I'll dive into that a little bit more as we go. But the discovery tree is really what you're seeing here. It's just a hierarchical tree that consists of the big parent item and sub items underneath. And sizes doesn't matter, but what you're doing is, again, falling back on making things visible, that we're evolving the tree and working on it as it grows, and then finishing it up. Now, along that way, there were some gotchas. And since that time with that healthcare company, I've actually worked with quite a few different companies evolving this. I've worked in small startups. I've worked at large enterprise organizations. I've worked with groups that had upwards of like 10 to 12 teams working with this. I've worked in small startups where it was really only just 2 developers working on this and using discovery trees. Now, and what I've seen is the initial reflex is, hey, this is easy. I know this. This is a hierarchical tree. I can design everything and put everything up in this tree. That's not quite it. And in fact, that's a little bit of an anti-pattern. I've seen that circle around and get really cumbersome and bite people in the behinds. So it's not a design spec. It's good to keep it smallish. Now, with that is, discovery trees, and there are other things out there that are used for planning. Discovery trees it's a tool for the people that are doing the work once it gets down to the point where it's hands-on keyboard time, or the work is being done completing things. There are other tools out there that are fantastic at a much higher level to do things, to plan things out in greater detail, like story maps. There's opportunity solution trees by Torres, product roadmaps. Those tools are great for this high level planning and sort of fall apart when you get down into the small detail of when things are being done. That's where discovery trees come in. So you have your story maps up at the top, you take that one item out, throw it into a discovery tree, work on it, and it gets done, and you go from there. You're using the right tool for the right thing. Now,
Can I just interrupt for one quick second?
yeah.
I just want to remind attendees, if you want to refresh the session event page at this point, you should be able to ask questions along the way, and we'll get to those towards the end of the talk. But you can just refresh your page at this point, folks. Sorry about that.
Thank you, Dave.
No problem.
I also want to bring up that this talk was originally a shorter talk. However, it was, once the content was revealed, they're like, oh, we want a longer talk on this. And so this is, for a 30-minute talk, this is going to be relatively short, and I will have some Q&A time at the end. So please do ask questions, and we'll get to those. To get back to the discovery tree here, is not everything, or everything doesn't have to be done or workable for a discovery tree to be done. This is about conversations. The discovery tree is a big visible information radiator that you can look at and go, oh, this is what they're working on right now, and this is the state of it. Oh, what about this? Have you guys thought about this? Yes, okay. And maybe adding a note onto it, things like that. One of the things that really came out of that initial healthcare, and coupled with COVID, was the need for it to be remote. And so Miro is perfect for that. And when we started playing around with it, right now I'm on a team that has roughly 18 people on it. And again, we are dynamically reteaming. Actually, we're dynamically reteaming every day. And we're using discovery trees, and our discovery trees, we normally get about 5 to 8 discovery tree bits worked a day between those teams. So sometimes everything's done, sometimes it's, hey, we did that simplest thing possible, and we figured out what needed to be done, and we're done with this tree, and we throw it away. And that gets the final point here, is they are meant to be short-lived. They're meant to be, 2 to 3 days. Maybe. It depends on how you work and how your teams work in small cyclic chunks. I've seen some discovery trees grow and become and be around for 2 to 3 weeks. But that tends to be a little bit of an anti-pattern, a little bit of smell. But you can work with it and play with it how you want. Now,
quick question, Steve, before you move on. So there's a question from Hendrik. Hendrik asked, so do you see the tree at the story or task level?
So that is a fantastic question. I'm going to go back a couple slides to this right here. When we first started using discovery trees, we talked about it as the parent work item being a story and then tasks underneath it. However, as they've evolved, and I personally, on the teams that I've been working with FAST, we actually aren't using stories per se. Most teams are using the term story and tasks, but I haven't been doing it, which is why I'm calling it work items. They can be. They very much, the parent work item in a lot of places would be a story, and then underneath it would be tasks. And sometimes stories can spin off of the higher level, or the higher level work items, and become stories of their own if they want. Does that help?
Yeah, perfect. Thanks,
okay.
Steve.
Yep. So again, there's no right or wrong way to be using discovery trees. I've seen them used for whole product backlogs, for release planning. They do tend to be cumbersome when you start getting 1,000 stickies on a Miro board or any board, it gets a bit cumbersome, but it can be done. And it does convey information really well. The key is that the guiding philosophies are there. By doing the work, we will discover the work that needs to be done. Plans are useless, but planning is everything. Yes, we do need to be planning things, but let's be smart about it. And then simplest, easiest thing that we can do to start getting feedback on. I want to pop back to the healthcare, the risk-averse healthcare company that we needed to get to the cloud. That company was known for having a very large meeting culture, and with FAST and with discovery trees and with the visibility of the discovery trees, we were able to cut down anywhere from 40 to 60% of our day in meetings down to 1 to 2 hours a day in meetings there. I'm going to fast forward to the team that I'm on right now. That's roughly 18 people, where we have one 15 to 30-minute meeting a day, and that's it for the whole week. And a lot of that is the visibility that discovery trees give us. When folks come in and say, where are you guys at? What are you doing? Right here. This is the discovery tree. Now, the company that I'm at right now does like us to have stories in Jira. So our discovery trees, that big parent work item, has a Jira ticket number associated with it, that top level item. So the only thing that we're tracking is that top level item. Now, with Dave's help, and without Dave, this would not have been in place. So thank you very much, Dave. We've created a Miroverse template. And that template is available. Go into Miroverse, search on discovery trees, and here it is. It's got a start here. There's an example of the discovery tree in action, which I showed you a little bit of. And then there's the template. And that template you can duplicate and you can add things in. You can remove things. You can play with it as you will. In that template, there is a link to at least one blog post, maybe two, and a YouTube talk that I gave at the Seattle Crafter Meetup. And then finally, thank you for showing up. We're going to open this up to QA. I'm Steve Kuo. I work at Industrial Logic. We're a consulting company. Can certainly come in, talk about fast agile, talk about discovery trees. Something I should also bring up with the discovery trees is there's a much longer talk that I'm currently working on, where you can use discovery trees. You can use a story map coupled with discovery trees and something like and Monte Carlo simulations to actually give you fairly accurate forecasting, more accurate forecasting than story pointing and burn down charts on how long it's going to take for your project to get done. It's pretty good stuff and very powerful stuff, but it's a much more in-depth talk.
Awesome.
So
thanks, Steve. I have another question here. How do you differentiate notes and comments when you're using discovery trees? Is there a way that you differentiate between the two?
Yeah, that is a great question. So with that, it all comes from the team and how the team is using it. And if your team has a differentiation between, oh, I'm going to make a comment on this versus a note, then you can have a different color post-it for it. I think on I'm thinking in my head, oh yeah, notes are orange and comments are purple. But that's just the colors on the team that I'm currently working with. It can mean the same thing, or it could be different. It all depends on your use cases. And I encourage folks to experiment and evolve it as they go. Do you need a differentiation? Can it be the same thing? It could be. Yeah.
Perfect. Thanks. And then Another question that came up was, could discovery trees be part of initial planning before teams plan their work in Jira? I know you mentioned a little bit about that link to a Jira item, but do you view this kind of as a planning artifact before Jira, or would you recommend a different approach to it?
Mm-hmm. I tend to lean towards discovery trees being the artifact that is not the artifact, the work product as the work is being done. When the sleeves are being rolled up and it's time to dive in and start doing things, that's where I really have seen discovery trees work well. When you're in that planning stage, that's really the realm, and there are lots of different tools for it. You know, Teresa Torres's opportunity solution trees are fantastic for that. The age-old gold standard of a story map or a product map, boom, right there. Those are the tools that are very well versed for that and work well there. I have seen some teams use discovery trees for that. Where it starts to break down a little is that you start getting this really, really big board that gets cumbersome, and you're then trying to differentiate and not differentiate. The discovery tree is meant to be more dynamic, where you can add and remove things, whereas story maps and that big planning, once things are planned out, it makes it more difficult to move things out, and it can get distracting.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Steve.
Yeah.
Another question here is, when you find or discover, things along the way as the work is being done, presumably you still have enough information about the requirements and the boundaries around the dev work. Is that a true statement?
So that is a true statement. And a lot of it is, I'm sure there are a number of developers or software development people that realize once you start in on a story, you discover things that you didn't know needed to be part of that story. So if it's going in and dealing with legacy code, sometimes you start digging and it's like, oh, I found these really bad things here. And sometimes discovery trees explode. And part of the usefulness of it is you can see when a tree explodes like that. And you can go, oh, why did you guys go down that path? And then you can have a conversation and go, that tree's gotten really big. You guys went down this path. Is there a different thing that we can do there instead? And that's where you sort of trim off some branches and you go, oh yeah, we could just do this, or, oh, that isn't really needed if it's going to take that much time. So let's do something different.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. We have about less than a minute left, Steve.
Mm-hmm.
The last question that I have here is, do you feed some of the discovered work back into Jira? And if so, when?
So if you do make some bigger discoveries that end up being larger items and you're using Jira to track it, I would say it gets added in whenever you would normally add in newly discovered work that needs to be done. If you're doing it in a more of a Kanban way, then those items can get rolled up into your Kanban board, things like that. So my suggestion, my advice is you add it in when you know that you need to be doing it.
Perfect.
Yeah.
That's great.
Thanks
All right.
everyone for coming. If you have any questions, reach out. I'm available on the Miroverse. I'm available on the email below and other links. Have fun. Enjoy.
Thank you, Steve. And thanks, everyone.